we were talking about the difference between training the nurses to do things that we know help medically and miracles. We had someone in there saying they got bit by a rat. We were really scared because, in the hospital got bit by a rat. We're like, oh no, what if they sue? What if they do something? They got bit by a rat in the hospital, had a wound on the finger. And then the family came back and said, well, it wasn't a natural rat, so you're okay. It was, a demon rat. It was, not that kind of miracle. It was the other kind of miracle. So you're off the hook because somebody cursed the patient, and that's why they got bit by a rat. And I thought,
okay.
Do we really believe that story or not? Do we believe that could happen? And the flip side was I had a set of nurses that came in with me, and we were resuscitating a patient.
Okay.
And they often don't, give the epi, do the chest compressions and whatnot. So here I am, and I usually do the chest compressions myself if I think we can save it.
Okay.
So I'm in there, I get up on the bed. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. She had just had a stroke and got home with a trach.
Okay.
And she came in blue. Then they said that, they didn't know what happened at home.
She was blue and black?
So I'm doing chest compressions. We give one round of epi. We start bagging. We get her stats up. We get her heart rate and pulse back. And, one of the nurses that had been helping later in the day when the patient finally woke up and looked normal, I said, you want to come see her? So she comes, she goes, it's a miracle. God brought this person. And I thought, where's the line here? How do you explain to somebody that, yes, I do believe in miracles, but, doing CPR and giving epinephrine and bringing someone back that you could bring back probably doesn't count as a miracle in this case. Although, is it sort of a miraculous thing that she's still alive and well and woke up? It is. So how do you find the line there with the nurses? I wanted to say, yeah, this is a miracle, but I also want to say, yes, and if you do good CPR, you can have this miracle.
You too can have more miracles.
So I don't know where the line is. How about, I don't know how to distinguish between a real, I saw an angel and it was a miracle thing versus...
Well, what do you say to patients here? Because I get this a lot of times. God healed me from my HIV. I know he healed me. I'm not going to retest, but I'm not taking my medicines.
We hear the same story.
I mean, what do? You're like, yes, I do believe God heals. I think he also works through doctors and medications. And I really think you should take them.
Yeah. That's a difficult one, too. I've had one person say that, and what I say is, I do believe in miracles. I don't believe they happen very often. If you really had a miracle and you're really HIV negative, then you should be willing to retest.
Right. But even if they retest, they might not believe the results as well. So that's another conception.
My one other story of sort of a miraculous thing. We had a patient that was in the wards, but turned out to be DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. And he got a little bit worse the first night, and that's when they called me. They usually call me if the patient's not doing well or if it turns out not to be a straightforward case, because we have general practitioners that admit otherwise. So there's a general practitioner on in the emergency room and admits him to the hospital, and then if it's complicated, I get a phone call. So I get a phone call that it looks more complicated. They need hourly blood sugars and an insulin drip, which the ward nurses usually don't do. So that's one that we took into our high care ward. And I was in. It was late at night. I don't remember what the time was. It was after dark. And the guy is sick, so everyone can argue that this is a hallucination. But he said, when he came back to see me doing well in the clinic, he said, that first night when I was in the hospital and I was so sick and you were taking care of me, when you came in at night, there were two huge men next to you that were clearly angels. They were there with you, helping you take care of me. How about, that's the one person that's ever said, okay, I've seen an angel right next to you in the hospital. Now, of course, he had DKA. So, it's easy to say, okay, it was a hallucination. But, I do believe in miracles and angels, and I do believe God's assisting me at my hospital. So it's not a real big stretch to say, yeah, there could be two angels with me, walking around the hospital. I've not been ever bothered walking around town. I've never had anyone look like they were going to rob me. I've never had any of that. So I think, well, maybe I do have two big guys following me around everywhere and that show up when they need to.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, there haven't been a lot of other huge, what we would think of as miracles, but certainly God moving. I can see God, directing the hospital. We've got the ICU open. We've got the nurses most of the way trained, and we're able to take care of 2 or 3 patients at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And a year ago, that would not have been true.
For Africa, that's a miracle.
I agree.
Trust me. But she had really no risk factors until after she delivered. It was like within probably 6 hours her blood pressure started going up. I was in bed by then because she delivered at night, and then the next morning she seized. But she's fine.
Yeah, I mean, and that's impressive. You know, whether you want to call it a miracle or, you know, God supporting your hospital to get there, because otherwise, if you hadn't have been around, she might not have made it. You know, that's a fairly high mortality for eclampsia.
Yeah. But no, God does work. I mean, I was just talking with Jerry. Jerry last night told me he had presents for me, which is always fun, you know. Mm-hmm. And so he told me last night. He's like, "Oh, I found these 2 stainless steel clamps," and he's like, "I didn't know what they were." And so I asked someone. They're like, "Oh, those are for circumcisions." And he didn't know. I hadn't told him. But 2 weeks ago, I had a complication with one of our babies. All I could think about was, I've heard horror stories of babies bleeding to death from circ. That's all I could think about. I ended up suturing. And after that, I swore I was not doing another one until I had a proper clamp.
Oh.
And
he had one for you.
He has one.
Without asking.
I know. I was like, wow.
See, that is a God thing.
Yeah, so I mean,
of all the things he could have found laying around, that one he flagged for you.
Right. Like, who? I mean, he didn't know, and it's not something that commonly crosses his path. So, yeah.
That is a God thing. What we've done, we did a lady with eclampsia and seizing, premature delivery. Baby had died. The baby was, I think, 20 weeks.
Yeah. Well, that's really early.
She came from the government hospital. She had a known history of seizures. Mm-hmm. She'd been seizing for 2 days, at that point unconscious, and they couldn't intubate to protect the airway.
Right.
And they said her CD4 count was good, and so, you know, the government hospital actually can call me on the phone. They have enough funds in a special account that they can send a few people for high care. And someone had chosen her.
And pay for it.
Yeah. Someone had chosen her, and they said, look, if, you know, we think she should make it, we shouldn't lose her. She's 20 years old. This is her 3rd delivery. She's got 2 kids at home. She's from the village. You know, no shoes. I think, you know, we want to transfer her to you. Her HIV is well controlled. And I said, fine. You know, we intubated her. She didn't need much ventilator support. It was mostly airway protection. And then gave phenobarb, IV loading. And she didn't wake up for 2 days. I was actually concerned that she'd seized until she, you know, was mostly unconscious. But after 3 days, she started, you know, really breathing on her own. And 3.5 days, we were able to take off the ventilator. She was just breathing through the ET tube. She wouldn't pick her head up, so I left the ET tube in, but she was breathing through it with no problems. And by the 4th day, she was extubated and moved to the wards at Goodwell. She had some residual left-sided leg weakness. When she had left, we can't keep them, you know, because they have the same kind of care there. So by the time they're extubated, I can't keep them at our hospital anymore. But last time I saw her, she was walking in the hallways.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought, you know, there's very few places where an HIV-positive pregnant woman with eclampsia that had been unconscious for 2 days would have done it. Walked out.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. There are miracles.
There are miracles. That's true.
Generally speaking, and I just pray that God keeps this way, the Seventh-day Adventists have a good reputation. Our hospital has a really good reputation. I have people, for example, the new surgeon in town, Cameroonian, he trained in Eastern Russia somewhere. And has now come back to do some, what he calls voluntary service, which essentially is based on what he could be making, for a little while. And he tells me when he was a kid, he came to our clinic.
Wow.
So, but yeah, so I pray that we're able to maintain such a standard. We might not have always the best, you know, all of the latest and greatest, but consistently patients say they come because they are well received. which means people are showing that they care.
And care is a big thing.
It is. And I mean, I have people who pay extra. Well, they're all paying extra more than we would at the government hospital to come and consult. And they'll pay to do their HIV testing. Because we have to buy our test, we can't give it out for free. Because they trust our confidentiality.
Well, do you mind if I have a prayer with you?
Certainly.
Okay. Dear Jesus, we'd like to thank you for the wonderful work that's going on in Cameroon at Trixie's Hospital and Malawi at our hospitals. We'd like to thank you for this opportunity we all have to get together and emphasize global health in your work as missions. I'd like to ask that you be especially with us as missionaries, as female physicians that are out. Please give us strength, give us confidence, help us as we wrestle to help other people with their issues, some of them very personal, like fertility and HIV. As we look back over the past 2 years, we realize how you've been working, and we ask that you continue to guide us as we go along.
Amen.